August 20th, 1987 marked a tragic day for North Greenbush, as the lifeless body of a young woman was found on the muddy banks of the Hudson River. This unfortunate victim was later identified as Diana Deso, a 19-year-old who had been seen leaving her boyfriend's Albany apartment in a distressed state the previous evening. While the identification process was swift, the investigation into her murder proved to be a lengthy and challenging endeavor, spanning a daunting 17-year period. To unravel the mysteries surrounding this chilling incident, we must retrace our steps to the very location where it all began. North Greenbush, situated in upstate New York, is a charming town renowned for its picturesque beauty. Nestled along the eastern banks of the Hudson River, this suburban community offers a serene and family-oriented environment. With a population of just over 13,000, North Greenbush embodies the essence of small-town living. However, even in such an idyllic setting, dark secrets can lurk beneath the surface, serving as a reminder that no place is immune to the presence of heinous crimes. On that fateful day, August 20th, 1987, the New York State Police Department received a distress call from a concerned passerby who had stumbled upon a lifeless body on the banks of the Hudson River in North Greenbush, New York. John Murray, a seasoned homicide detective from the NYSP, promptly responded to the call, making his way down the trails leading to the river. As he approached the scene, he was met with the sight of a motionless woman lying face down, partially submerged in the water, her body resting upon the muddy embankment of the Hudson River. During the initial examination, all indications pointed towards a homicide. It seemed that someone had intentionally tried to dispose of the victim's body in the river, but their plan was thwarted when it got caught on a piece of wood near the riverbank. The detective was disheartened to find no identifying information except for a brush. An urgent bulletin was promptly issued, and the news was broadcasted on local television channels. Detective Murray held on to hope that someone would step forward to identify this unfortunate victim. Mary Ann Deso, a resident of Colony, New York, found watching the news on television particularly distressing as she hadn't heard from her 19-year-old daughter, Diana Deso, since the previous night. Fearing the worst, the family contacted the police, who connected them with the investigators working on the Hudson River case, initiating the identification process. Once the identification was completed, the investigators eagerly awaited the autopsy results for further insights. The report confirmed that Diana had been strangled and also revealed the presence of unidentified bodily fluid on her body, along with possible signs of assault. Unfortunately, no additional evidence pertaining to the killer could be obtained. Detectives even tried to retrace Diana's steps before her murder. It was discovered that on the evening of August 19, 1987, Diana had a heated argument with her undisclosed boyfriend. In a fit of anger, she stormed out of his apartment in Albany, New York. Sadly, this was the last time anyone saw her alive. Although the boyfriend was not considered a suspect, the detectives were unable to identify any other individuals on their list of suspects. Consequently, the case eventually went cold, leaving her grieving family longing for justice. In 2004, a remarkable 17 years after the discovery of Diana Deso's murder, the case was reopened by Dave Madden, a senior investigator from the New York State Police Department. By this point in time, advancements in DNA technology had progressed enough for Madden to send the unidentified bodily fluid sample to the New York State Police Crime Lab for further examination. Dr. Allison Eastman, a forensic analyst with the New York Police, conducted thorough tests and successfully generated a complete STR-DNA profile from the sample. On May 24, 2004, she entered the profile into CODIS, leading to a groundbreaking revelation. Not only did the profile already exist in the database, but the individual associated with it was already serving time in prison. The bodily fluid matched that of a convicted felon named Ray Keller. Although Keller had no apparent connection to Diana, his criminal history made him a prime suspect in this case. In 1989, Keller had committed a violent assault against a 16-year-old girl, resulting in a prison sentence of 8 to 25 years. Following this significant breakthrough, Dave Madden joined forces with two other NYSP detectives, Steve Ortiz and Deborah Comar, to pursue this lead. Before directly engaging with the suspect, the detectives decided to first speak with the now adult victim of Killar's previous crime. While she had survived the attack, it shared unsettling similarities with Diana Disso's murder, which had occurred just 2 years earlier. Both victims had been assaulted and strangled. Although there was no direct link between these two cases, the importance of Killar's conviction cannot be overstated in relation to Diana's murder. Without it, Killar's DNA may have never been present in the system. Armed with substantial evidence connecting Ray Killar to Diana's case, investigators were ready to interrogate him about her murder. However, they still needed his confession to strengthen their case. There was a possibility that Killar could claim to have had a personal relationship with Diana, but deny any involvement in her murder. Prior to directly approaching Ray Killar, the detectives sought guidance from psychologist Richard Hamill, who had spent 20 years conversing with convicts. They were hopeful that Hamill's expertise would assist them in delving into Ray Killar's psyche and encouraging him to open up about the case. On December 17, 2004, Detective Madden and Ortiz conducted an interview with Ray Killar. The detectives explicitly informed him that they were aware of his encounter with Diana Disso in 1987, but Killar denied recognizing the name. Despite Killar's repeated denials and lies, the forensic evidence clearly placed him at the scene with Diana. Therefore, when the detectives decided to reveal the trump card they held, the DNA evidence, Killar finally broke down. With the audio recording in progress, Killar recounted the events of August 1987 when Diana Disso tragically lost her life. Killar admitted that on that August evening, 17 years prior, he was under the influence of both alcohol and drugs. He stated that while driving around, he noticed a young woman hitchhiking along Central Avenue in Albany and chose to pull over. Killar then drove the car to a wooded area in North Greenbush near the Hudson River. After assaulting the vulnerable young woman, Killar unexpectedly allowed her to get dressed. However, it was a comment made by Diana Disso at that moment that may have tragically sealed her fate. She mentioned that she was going to tell. Killar went on to explain that he was consumed by rage and continued to tighten his grip on Diana's neck until she stopped resisting. Convinced that she would succumb to his attack, Killar decided to dispose of her lifeless body in the river. Through a combination of patience and effective interrogation techniques, Detectives Madden and Ortiz achieved the confession they had been seeking, just as psychologist Hamill had predicted. Rensselaer County District Attorney Patricia D'Angelis and Deputy District Attorney Joe Abalove, who handled the prosecution, were dedicated to obtaining justice for Diana's family above all else. In 2005, Ray Killar ultimately pleaded guilty to second-degree murder before Rensselaer County Court Judge Patrick J. McGrath. He was sentenced to 22 years to life in state prison on July 5, 2005, with the term to be served consecutively to his previous sentence. Although he appeared remorseful, the harsh truth remains that he cannot reverse the tragic loss of Diana or erase the suffering he caused her family. On December 15, 1980, 31-year-old Melanie Urad embarked on her usual journey to the Tacoma Hospital in California, where she worked as a nurse. Little did she know that this seemingly ordinary workday would take a sinister turn. At a stoplight, a witness observed two men forcefully entering Melanie's pickup truck, abducting her against her will. Tragically, this would be the last time anyone saw her alive. The question remains, who were these two men, and what could have motivated them to commit such a heinous act? Tacoma, California, a town deeply rooted in history and natural beauty, derives its name from the Tataviam language, meaning entrance. Established by farmers of Mayan descent around 1500, Tacoma was named after a small stream. The Two Brothers Rock Formation, a unique Southern California landmark shaped by an underground river, adds to the town's charm. Founded by two brothers known for their healing practices, Tacoma now boasts one of the cleanest water supplies in the nation, sourced from natural springs. With a population of around 77,000 in 2020, the town sees common petty crimes like property theft and robberies, but hardly any cases of assault or murder. This is where our victim, Melanie Uribe, was based. Born on September 9, 1948, Melanie was 31 years old in 1980 when the incident occurred. She worked as a nurse at Pacoma Hospital in Burbank, California, after marrying young and becoming a single mother to her 8-year-old son following the divorce. Described as a hard worker who was always willing to help others, Melanie was dedicated to providing her son with a comfortable life. She rarely missed a shift at work, which raised concerns when she failed to show up on December 15, 1980. Despite attempts to contact her, no one knew her whereabouts. On that fateful night, Melanie never made it to the hospital, prompting worries about her sudden disappearance. The Los Angeles Police Department was notified, fearing the worst. The search for Melanie was in full swing, but it lacked any clear direction or useful information, making it feel like a futile endeavor. However, the following morning, the police made a significant discovery when they found Melanie's burnt truck. The puzzling part was that there were no signs of an accident or any trace of Melanie's whereabouts. It wasn't until an anonymous witness came forward with a crucial piece of information that the case took a different turn. According to the witness, they saw two men forcefully enter Melanie's truck while she was stopped at a red light on her way to work. This revelation transformed the investigation from a missing person case to an abduction case. However, before the focus could fully shift to Melanie's disappearance, another woman named Etta Smith captured everyone's attention. Etta, an employee at an aerospace company, had a regular day at work until she heard about Melanie's case on the radio. Strangely enough, upon hearing the news, she had a sudden vision of Melanie and claimed that Melanie was not being held captive in any house. This psychic experience was a first for Etta, leaving her both certain and astonished. She described the vision as a vivid movie playing in her mind, depicting a canyon, a winding road, shrubbery, hills in the background, and a dirt path leading to something white. Etta believed that the white object symbolized Melanie's nurse's uniform, which she wore when leaving for work. Detective Lee Ryan, assigned to the case, initially had doubts about Etta's credibility as a businesswoman. However, Etta reached out to him, sharing her vision and her belief that Melanie's body would be found in a remote area of the San Fernando Valley called Lopez Canyon, above Lakeview Terrace. Although uncertain about Melanie's condition, Etta was convinced that this was the location where she would be discovered. After reporting her vision to the police, Etta was taken aback when she met with the detectives the next day to search the areas she had seen in her vision using a helicopter. However, instead of waiting for the police, she decided to search for Melanie with a small group of family members. As she drove up the canyon, she felt a strong and distinct sensation, an emotional upheaval that indicated Melanie's presence. This feeling became even stronger in her mind, compelling her to navigate the canyon once again. When she noticed recent tire marks, the same inner turmoil resurfaced, and she sensed a connection between the vehicle and the unfolding events. As they ventured deeper into the canyon near Lakeview Terrace, they stopped again when Etta's daughter spotted something unusual in the foliage. Etta was drawn towards it and came face to face with a figure wearing white nurse's shoes, mirroring the landscape from her earlier visions. The autopsy confirmed that the body was indeed Melanie Uribe, revealing a grim story of robbery, assault, and ultimately, murder. Etta's earlier vision aligned perfectly with the forensic findings. Despite this confirmation, the identity of the perpetrators remained unknown. Unfortunately, suspicion began to fall on Etta in light of these developments. Consequently, on the evening following the discovery of Melanie's body, Etta found herself being arrested. The detectives were genuinely suspicious of how she had prior knowledge of the case. Despite being subjected to extensive questioning, Etta consistently maintained her innocence. After hours of interrogation, they decided to administer a polygraph test. Although she successfully passed the test, the detectives informed her that one of them had provided sworn testimony alleging deceptive behavior, including an attempt to manipulate her breathing. Law enforcement began to consider the possibility that if Etta wasn't directly involved in the crime, she may have obtained her information through neighborhood gossip or someone who had knowledge of the details but was unwilling to come forward. It was speculated that her alleged vision may have been motivated by a desire for financial gain. However, a more compassionate interpretation could attribute her failure on the polygraph test to the psychological impact of the traumatic vision and the subsequent search for the body. Nevertheless, she found herself in a perplexing situation, possessing detailed knowledge of the body's whereabouts from an unlikely source. As a result, she was officially charged with murder the following morning. On December 18, 1980, she was arrested and held barefoot in a cell. For 24 hours, she was deprived of food and water, with the police hoping she would break and confess to the crime. Etta remained in custody for a total of 4 days, without any communication or contact. It was during this time that a witness came forward to the LAPD and confessed to overhearing 21-year-old Louise Carnell Morgan, 21-year-old Spencer Nelson, and an unnamed 17-year-old man boasting about killing Melanie. They were subsequently arrested and confessed to the crime shortly after. Upon their confession, Etta Smith was released from custody. On December 21, 1980, the trio admitted to taking advantage of an opportunity at a stoplight. They forcibly entered Miss Europe's truck and directed her towards a desolate canyon located 15 miles north of her home. There, they subjected her to unspeakable acts of violence, robbing, assaulting, and brutally beating her as she begged for her life. The ultimate act of cruelty resulted in her death, caused by blunt force trauma inflicted by a large rock. The wheels of justice turned, leading to the conviction of these attackers who are now serving time in prison. The extraordinary circumstances surrounding Melanie Uribe's case raise questions about the validity of information obtained through inexplicable means. To this day, there is no explanation as to how Etta witnessed and knew the location of a victim with whom she had no connection. A vision without justice would likely remain unfulfilled. Limited details are available regarding the motive behind targeting Melanie. Despite numerous theories, definitive answers remain elusive. As this captivating story comes to a close, we'd encourage you to participate in the discussion. Was Etta's premonition a remarkable stroke of luck or simply a random occurrence? How do you view the delicate balance between doubt and instinct that played out in Melanie's situation? Do you believe that psychics have a role to play in criminal investigations? Our next case takes us to Galt, a city situated in Sacramento County, California. Galt offers its residents a quiet suburban setting, and it is worth mentioning that the majority of the people living in this community are homeowners. It is in Galt that the story of Lucille Holtgren unfolds. Not much is known about Lucille's early life, but it is documented that she and her husband, Frank Holtgren, moved to Galt from Idaho in 1968. They were proud parents to 2 children, Frank and Henry. By the late 1970s, their sons had grown up and moved away, but Lucille and Frank chose to remain in the neighborhood. They were known for their kindness and affection, treating the children in the area as if they were their own grandchildren. Sean Jacobs, a former neighbor of the Holtgrens, shared that they were open-hearted and welcoming. He fondly remembered being invited into their home during the summer, where they generously offered cookies and lemonade. Sean emphasized that he had never heard a single unkind word from Lucille. According to others who knew Lucille, she led a simple and humble life. She held a strong devotion to her family and her place of worship, Galt's First Methodist Church. Neighbors affectionately described her as a typical grandmother figure, often spending long hours tending to her garden. However, a significant change occurred in November 1985 when Lucille's husband, Frank, was admitted to a nursing home. As a result, Lucille found herself living alone in the company of her cats. Tragically, almost 2 years later, in October 1987, Frank passed away, succumbing to Alzheimer's disease. This loss deeply affected their entire family. In the midst of these challenging times, Lucille continued to navigate her life on her own. Yet, fate had another tragedy in store. On Friday, May 20th, 1988, Lucille celebrated her 79th birthday, unaware that it would be her last. On the following Sunday, May 22nd, the absence of Lucille from church caused concern among her fellow church members, as she was known to be a regular attendee. The day after, on May 23rd, 2 of Lucille's friends decided to visit her and check on her well-being. They entered her home through a partially open sliding glass door and were shocked to discover Lucille's lifeless body in her bedroom. It was a tragic sight, as the elderly lady had fallen victim to a brutal crime having been stabbed, assaulted, and strangled to death. The state of her body indicated that some time had passed since her demise, adding to the distressing nature of the situation. Deeply alarmed by what they had found, the friends immediately rushed to the Gulf Police Department to report the horrifying scene. The police promptly responded and initiated an investigation into this tragic incident. Upon arrival, the responding officers noticed visible injuries on Lucille's chest. Interestingly, nothing seemed to be missing from her small one-bedroom home, leading investigators to rule out robbery as a motive. Determining the exact time of Lucille's death posed an initial challenge for the detectives. Initially, they believed she had been deceased for up to a week, considering the extent of decomposition. However, friends clarified that they had seen or spoken to Lucille just 3 days before her body was discovered. Subsequent autopsy reports revealed that Lucille had died from 2 fatal stab wounds to her chest. This heinous crime left Lucille's neighbors deeply alarmed, prompting them to take measures to enhance their security, such as locking doors and windows at night and implementing additional safety precautions to protect their families. Throughout the investigation conducted by the Gulf Police, several witnesses, including neighbors, family members, and church acquaintances, were identified and interviewed. The Sacramento County Sheriff's Office crime scene investigators provided valuable assistance by gathering a substantial amount of evidence from the scene. Despite extensive efforts and collaboration, the police were unable to definitively identify a suspect, even though fingerprints were collected by agents from the California Department of Justice and nail scrapings were successfully preserved from Lucille's body for potential future testing. As time passed, the leads grew colder and the case remained unsolved, leaving the community grappling with uncertainty and many unanswered questions. However, after over 30 years, technology finally caught up, and in January 2022, the county crime lab revisited the DNA evidence that had been stored for decades. Surprisingly, it was the fingernail scrapings that proved to be the key in cracking the case. Detectives entered the DNA profile derived from the genetic material found in the scrapings into the database, leading to a significant breakthrough. The profile matched an individual named Terry Leroy Bramble, who was revealed to have been a longtime resident and transient in Galt. Terry had a history of criminal convictions and had spent years living on the city's streets, often beneath a Highway 99 overpass. Unfortunately, Terry passed away in 2011 at the age of 55 due to natural causes. Interestingly, during the initial investigation into Lucille's death in 1988, Terry had not surfaced as a suspect, according to police records. With both the suspect and Terry now deceased, investigators were left without the means to uncover the motive behind the crime or how Terry and Lucille may have crossed paths prior to her untimely death. Despite the lack of accountability for Lucille's murderer, officials from the Galt Police expressed their satisfaction in finally being able to close the case. Although the questions surrounding the motive and circumstances remained unanswered, there was a sense of closure and resolution after more than 30 years of uncertainty. During a news conference, Sacramento County District Attorney Anne Marie Schubert conveyed a statement on behalf of Lucille's surviving son, Henry Holtgren, who expressed his sentiments. He disclosed his relief that the case had ultimately been resolved, but also expressed his desire for the responsible individual to still be alive to face the consequences of their actions. Henry emphasized that while this development provided some answers, it could never truly bring closure due to the lasting impact of the tragedy on their lives.